this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button as well as the bell to be notified of future videos. Thank you.
Hello Internet, we are back. Colonel Frans Fourie, the man himself, 1 Recce commander, 4 Recce second in command. You know, you can write books about this fellow, and I'm sure there's a book coming. And if it's like that, I will let you know. Colonel Frans, welcome back. You're going to speak to us about your time at 4 Recce. I know you do read all the questions and comments. I wonder if we can just briefly just answer a few of them. I would be grateful. I'm not going to mention names again. I made an ass of myself last week. Flatkies, I apologize. I do get confused. There's so many letters and people contacting us. Thank you for that. We're really grateful. Over to you, sir.
Koos, once again, thank you very much for hosting. Thank you for what you are doing behind the scenes, you and Rebecca. I do know that I might get some sleep. Some of the other guys that have the conversations get some sleep, but I'm not sure if you and Rebecca are getting sleep. So thank you very much for what you are doing. Koos, yes, I just want to maybe put things in context again, as I normally do. I think the previous episode I ended up where I completed my time at the military academy, and I went to 4 Special Forces Regiment in Langebaan, and that's where I went. I did not go back to 1 Special Forces Regiment in Durban. When I went to the military academy, I came from 1 Recce and then to the military academy, but I opted to go to 4 Recce at the sea. Koos, I read the questions of the persons. I've answered them on the on the YouTube question mark. But before I answer some of those questions on the YouTube now, I just want to thank the people for the extremely positive comments they've made. You humble me. I really respect that very, very much, and I'm glad I can share the stories with you. And I must admit, and there's one person that said, where I say it's a story for later, he said, I'm not off the hook, I have to tell the stories again. But I must admit, I'm really just telling maybe the main stories, or the things that remains in the mind, but there's many more to tell. But as it may be, I'll just stick to the main stories, and I'll leave the others for later. Koos, I think the first question was about Operation Argon. Operation Argon was the operation that was executed by Captain Wynand de Tooy in the north of Angola, or actually in the enclave of Cabinda, to destroy some oil facilities there. I wasn't part of that operation, so I am not qualified to give comment or say something. But yes, most of my friends was part of that operation. Wynand de Tooy himself is a colleague of mine. I know him very much. I respect Wynand a lot, and so on. I think the question was, why didn't we, or the Special Forces, or somebody plan an operation to actually go and free him where he was in jail? Now, I just want to put that in context. A lot of people ask a lot of the Special Forces guys, why don't you assassinate X, Y, and Z that's doing this, that, and the other? Now, I want to put this question in the same category. When you plan an assassination or a hostage release, it's not a hostage release in the case of Wynand, but a capture release. One must always remember that the situation the person finds himself in is of such a nature that he's under, he's in a jail. So he's well protected, and normally prisons or jails are well protected. And there's normally either police or soldiers or whatever looking and caring and taking care of the security of those installations. Now, to plan an operation like that, to go and free, so to speak, one person, you have to, it's a lot of planning, and you have to commit a lot of resources. And then, due to the nature of the environment the person is kept, you actually put a lot of people's lives at risk. And then you must always ask, is the operation worth the risk you are taking? And, from an international level through to the resources you have to employ to actually execute the operation. Sorry, Koos, I just want to put my electrical cable back in my computer. And so that's the factors you have to consider. So, and the same with assassinations. What if you always have to, very, very carefully consider the what ifs and what thereafter. So, to summarize, my answer to you is the evaluation or the analysis you do as to what you can gain and what you can lose should be very, very carefully considered. Of course, then the other question, which I did not answer on the YouTubes, is the panoramic hotel in Langebaan. Now, yes, the panoramic hotel in Langebaan was the one and only hotel in Langebaan. Now, I must admit, it's prior to my time, but I've heard all the stories, or most of the stories of the panoramic hotel, or the Ramo Panic, as they would refer to. Now, the panoramic hotel was used by the military to actually accommodate the 4 Recce people, C group, Charlie group, that was that came from Durban, and that was the guys that would form the first 4 Recce commando in Langebaan. So they used to stay at the panoramic hotel. Now, obviously, the panoramic hotel is in Langebaan. Langebaan was a very, very small little village at that stage. I mean, it's escalated, and it's a very big and a very beautiful place today. But in those days, that was the hotel, the go-to hotel in that part of the world. And all the farmers and fishermen and whoever went to the panoramic hotel. And obviously, it's an open hotel. There's a bar, there's a restaurant, etc., etc. And you can just imagine how the guys enjoyed themselves. The locals, they claimed the panoramic to be theirs. And after a while, the 4 Recce guys actually claimed that to be their accommodation. So, there was great parties held there, and there was a lot of other stories one can tell. But there's amazing stories you can. One should actually get one of the guys that stayed in the panoramic to tell the stories. So yeah, I can't relate to the specific things that happened there, but it was a great place to be, and Langebaan is still really a nice place. Then I want to start. I ended my last episode on that I in 86 went to 4 Recce. The commander at that stage was Commandant Hannes Venter. Hannes Venter is also a very well known person within the Special Forces fraternity. A brilliant guy. A lot of respect for him. In fact, I saw him last week when my plaster was removed from my leg. That day, Hannes called me. He's currently in the UAE, and he paid a short visit to South Africa, and we met up. It's going very well with Hannes. But yes, Hannes Venter was the commander of 4 Special Forces Regiment, a no-nonsense guy, a very clever and brilliant guy, a guy with vision and a real visionary person. You know, I'm sure if he stayed in the military, I am sure that Hannes Venter would have, you know, gone to really high levels within the military. Koos, yes, I want to put 4 Recce or 4 Reconnaissance Regiment just in context. It's the seaward or the maritime unit of Special Forces. I gave a bit of a background of, you know, a Special Forces in a country, and I think for Recce you can make a comparison to the SBS of the British Special Forces, and then of course it is a similar type of organization as to the SEALs of America. Now, I would say the only difference between 4 Recce and the SEALs and the SBS is the fact that the UK and the US, you know, they're just countries with a very large economy, and they have much more advanced and, you know, the support they can give to the people is of such a nature that the vessels, the submarines, the other equipment is just much more advanced than what South Africa actually had at the time, or maybe still have. As it may be, I think that 4 Recce is probably, and I know I will get some comments from colleagues within Special Forces, to my opinion, the pinnacle of Special Forces. Why do I say that? For the following reason. You cannot join 4 Recce without going through the complete selection process and training process of all people that join Special Forces. So at the end of your minor tactics, when you receive your operator's badge, once again a story for later, and I'll get to that, the operator's badges, but when you're, you know, accepted Special Forces member, you can choose to, if there's a specific need from higher HQ that, you know, more people should go to 5 Recce or 1 Recce, it is done in that way. But if you wanted to join 4 Special Forces, you could join Special Forces. Now, the specialized courses you can do in the landward Recce commandos is probably, you know, sniping, small teams, advanced demolitions, advanced medics, advanced signals, etc. But all of those advanced courses you also do if you go to 4 Recce. And Halo and Freefall and things like that. But the guys of 4 Recce, they do all that stuff as well. But 4 Recce gives you the other dimension in terms of air, land, and sea. And when we get to the sea part of that, there's a oppervlakte, a surface dimension to that, and then a subsurface dimension. The surface dimension includes and encompasses reconnaissance, swimming, and you know, operations on top of the water. It also encompasses the use of specialized vessels or boats, fast boats that is armed typically like a SAS in the Second World War, David Stirling, you know, with the jeeps and the, what was it, Bedfords, or no, not Bedfords, Chefs or whatever, which they gunned up and shot, you know, targets out. Now, in 4 Recce, the subsurface or the surface vessels are the same, and then obviously the supporting vessels. And then the surface vessels are also used to transport. You know, it's merely a transport method from the South African Navy vessels and ships which are carried on board the larger vessels, is launched at sea, and then those vessels or the smaller boats are used to transport a raiding team to the land them, and then exfiltrate them, and so on. The subsurface part of that is the attack diving part of it. Now, attack diving really materialized in the Second World War, and leaders in that field was the British, and then also the Italians. That was very well advanced in the skills and the development of diving equipment, and obviously the associated explosives and devices that could be used to neutralize targets like, harbor infrastructure, piers, bridges, and then obviously sinking ships and that type of operations. So that's the subsurface operations. So, and then there's, going hand in hand with that is the development of very specialized mines that can destroy various, types of targets. Interestingly enough, and the boffins and the clever people will know, you can design a mine which you actually program the resonance of a specific vessel into the bomb or the charge. So other vessels can go over that charge, and if the right vessel goes over it, it actually pairs the resonance or the frequency of the noise of a certain vessel, and it explodes, and it can take out. So it's a very specialized environment when you get to underwater demolitions, and then obviously the development of the mines and the offensive equipment you can use within for special forces. Obviously, a thing that is escalated within the world is piracy. So hostage release on vessels and ships is also integral part of for special forces, and is done in that way. Then, of course, for special forces could not exist if it wasn't for the Navy. So, the cooperation with the South African Navy is absolutely crucial. That is the backbone, so to speak, of your transportation to certain operational areas. And then obviously, as I've said, that the 4 Recce surface boats would be on board these vessels, launched in a specific way, and then you do the other part of it. There was a question as well, I think 2 of the episodes away, did I do submarine operations? And I said I'll get to it in a later episode, and this is the episode I'm going to address that. So yes, part of the Navy's inventory in that era was the Daphne class submarines, which is it's a French submarine. It's a relatively small submarine, and it is regarded as a very clandestine type of vessel or submarine to be used. It's a very quiet submarine, and it served its purpose very, very well within the era from the 80s until when the Navy actually got their new submarines, and I think it's from the Germans. So yes, a lot of operations in special forces in 4 Recce was conducted with the submarines, either in the capacity of an infiltration vessel, and then the submarine would pop up. The special forces guys would, in literally 3 minutes, inflate and deploy from a submarine where it actually dives, and then you are free. So the submarine goes into hiding, and the Force Special Forces executes either a recce or a on land operation, and then go back to sea and RV at sea with the submarines. And of course, I want to testify today that the Navy guys all around. We worked with the support vessels like the SAS Protea, the Tafelberg, the Outeniqua. They're all very, very professional, from the officers through to the rates, and their support to special forces was always of the highest standard. And then obviously your submariners is a special species of people. I want to say it's pretty much like the special forces guys within an environment. So they also have to go through psychological scanning, etc., to be able to operate in a very confined space and execute specialized operations. So the submariners from SAS Hugo Bierman, that was their land base, and the Daphne class sailors was of a very, very, very high nature. And then, not to be forgotten, the Strike Raft crew. The Strike Raft is a vessel that was designed and built in Israel, and the Strike Raft was extensively used by Force Special Forces to be transported, and then in support and so on. So the naval component within the Defence Force was of critical importance, such as the SAF, the Air Force, and obviously we always forget the doctors. On each and every operation which we deployed, there was a component of doctors that actually supported us. Now there was a 7 Med was formed, which falls under the the geneeskundige, geneeskundige dienste, and on all these operations, there was doctors and space medics that deployed with us. So, special forces cannot claim all their honors without the support of the supporting services of the Navy, of the doctors and the medics, and obviously the helicopters, and then internally our own logisticians and HR and so on. I'm veering a bit off, but I just want to put that in context, Koos. So officially, I want to say thank you to all the services that supported the Special Forces operations landwards and at sea. Without them, we could not have achieved what Special Forces have achieved. And then obviously our own logisticians, our own loggies and tiffies and all those people. First, I want to come back to my time at Fort Recce as such. As I've said in the previous episode, I cleared in at Langebaan at Force Special Forces in January 86, and by the mid of the year, by June, July, I had completed all my basic sea courses, which entails surface swimming and beach reconnaissance, small boats, cooperation with the submarines, cooperation with the Strike Raft, and then some special seaward type of training, working with ropes and stuff like that. So yes, by the mid of that year, I had not done my attack diving course yet, but that would come later. Course, Yeah, for Recce, just to give the viewers a bit of a context of that, is situated in Langebaan. It's about 150, 180 kilometers up the west coast from Cape Town, and it lies on the coast in the bay of Saldanha. And the land work part in Saldanha, we had the administrative HQ, where the offices was, and most of the support services was on that side, as well as the messes and the accommodation for the people. Then on the island side, now it's not an island, it's actually a peninsula called Donkergat. That is where the operational base of Fort Recce is situated. Now, how did we get from Langebaan to Donkergat? There's two ways to get there. You can either drive by road, and I think it eventually about 25 kilometers, and that wasn't done. But we were ferried over from Langebaan side towards Donkergat. Now, we used ferry boats, 35 and a 45 support vessel, which we launched on the Langebaan side from actually the SAS, what the hell was his name? Flamingo. SAS Flamingo was a Navy base. Now, just to give you a bit of background about that, Langebaan Weg, which is a Air Force base, is about 20 k's inland from Langebaan. Now, in the Second World War, the British actually used Langebaan Weg as well as SAS Flamingo as a support base, because the Catalinas that used to land on the sea would land in the Langebaan area. So the support vessels for the Catalinas was actually based at SAS Flamingo. Fort Recce actually took over the facilities over time, and so that whole area was also part of Fort Recce. On the Donkergat side, on the island, so to speak, as I've said, was the operational base. That's where all our equipment, the boats and everything was kept. All training was done there, diving training, surface training, and landward operational preparations as well. So at the HQ on the Donkergat side, obviously the OC, the commander at his office, and the commandos that actually executed the operations also had their hangars and facilities and team rooms and offices to do whatever they had to do. Now, was just the short distance from Flamingo to Donkergat is about 3.1 kilometers. So it took about 30 minutes, a bit longer for the ferries to cross. But in many cases, we used to swim over, either from the Donkergat side or the Langebaan side, mostly from the Donkergat side to Langebaan. And, just to put some things in perspective, a 2.4 kilometer run is a qualifying run for the landward guys. And obviously they run much longer and longer distances. But swimming for 3, 4, 5, 10 kilometers in the sea, especially when the sea is choppy, it's a different kettle of fish. That's why I say, the environment of Fort Recce is a very interesting thing. Then maybe another, I don't want to say useless piece of information, but the Benguela current that actually flows from the north to the south, flows past the Langebaan area, and it brings cold water past the area of Langebaan. Now, once again, into context, the water temperature in Langebaan is fairly cold. It varies between 8 to 9 degrees, and then maybe goes up to 13 degrees on the surface. Now, when you start diving, for each meter you go down, the temperature goes down. So when you start talking about diving operations, you would dive in temperatures of anything from 4 to 5 degrees up to 9 degrees. And obviously you've got your wetsuit on or a dry suit and so on. But operating and working in that kind of water temperatures, you get used to it at a stage, but it taps some energy, and there's a lot of people. They say they want to join 4 Recce, and the second day in the water, they say no, I don't want to be at 4 Recce anymore. So yes, Koos, I'm going to reflect on a few operations. That was operational stuff that was executed from 4 Recce. And then, as I've said, the operations I talk about is the ones, and only some of the ones I was involved with. I want to just introduce a book. It's Einfist from the Sea, with the authors of Doustein and Arne Suderland. Doustein was a 4 Recce guy, and Arne Suderland was a commander of several vessels in the Navy, and he became a rear admiral at, I think, when he retired. The Einfist from the Sea reflects and tells all the stories of all the operations that was executed by 4 Special Forces Regiment, and even before that. So, some of the first operations that was executed was done in 1971, in Dar es Salaam, where the submarines were, and I think he was Commander Woody Woodburn. He later became the chief of the Navy, and he acted for a long time as the SSO Naval in Special Forces HQ, where they deployed, and the people like Koos Moorcroft, Trevor Floyd, Ken Bruin, and some other guys that actually launched an operation into Dar es Salaam, where they blew up a bridge, and they were all decorated with a Van Riebeeck Medal, which is the equivalent to the Honoris Crux in those days. After the Van Riebeeck decoration, I think in the late 70s, it changed to the Honoris Crux series. So, a very brave operation that was launched, and a very secretive operation that was launched by the Navy, and then people that would later become part of the Dirty Dozen and forming of Special Forces. I want to jump back to the war in Angola. In the 86, 85, 86, 87, 88, major operations was launched, and I think that was the culmination of the conventional war within southern Angola. Now, Special Forces participated in some of these operations, and Iheke was one of the operations where we took a lot of losses. I've spoken about that, but after Iheke, it was a fait accompli that Special Forces should not be used as a attacking force to really just be cannon fodder and attack offensives like that, but to be employed more as a strategic weapon to cut supply lines and execute reconnaissance and do more specialized operations. Now, in all the conventional operations, Special Forces guys of 5 Recce, 4 Recce, and 1 Recce was involved, and 2 Recce, obviously, which they did target indication, reconnaissance, acted as forward observation officers, and so on. So they played a major role supporting and assisting the conventional forces. Back to 4. 4 started focusing on cutting the supply lines of logistics to FAPLA and SWAPO within the war arena in southern Angola. Now, what did that entail? That entailed, obviously, fuel and petrol and diesel and that stuff is a critical component of fighting a war. So for Recce, due to the fact that the harbors and the means and the ways the fuel was transported, ended up in harbors and fuel depots close to the coast. So obviously, 4 special forces focused on operations to blow up petrol stations, not petrol stations, fuel depots and such as Kerslig, which I referred to previously. Now, there was a series of operations that attacked fuel installations. In Namib has always been a critical part. It is south, and from there to Njiva, which is close to the operational area of FAPLA, Namib was attacked about 4 times by special forces, over time. And I can't understand that the enemy didn't realize that it would always be a target, that they did not put up better defensive systems, etc. But as it may be, it was good for us, and we could hit them time and time again. Was then when was it? In 19, let me just check my notes. Drosh Day in 1986, it was decided that Namib had to be attacked again. They had a considerable fuel dump, where they stored crude oil as well as diesel and petrol. And then obviously the Russian vessels and the Cuban vessels used to dock at Namib as well as in Luanda and offload war logistics for the war effort in southern Angola. So Operation Drosh Day was ordered that we should eliminate or knock out Namib again. That was preceded by Operation Side was the reconnaissance on the port of Namib. Now, that was also executed and done by submarine, and the person in charge there was a Major Pierre Lindbergh. He used to come, or he came from the parachute battalion. He was a pathfinder in parachute battalion, did his selection, and was also a 4 Recce operator. Very qualified and dedicated man. So the reconnaissance was done on the harbor or the key facilities at Namib, and possible landing areas from where a landward raiding team could attack the oil installations. Was then when they returned, preparations was done, and the force composition was done to actually execute Operation Drosh Day. Now, I was tasked as a small team member at that stage. Sorry, because I did not mention that. I was dealt into an offensive. I had my own team, but we were obviously offensive, and then also to deal with reconnaissance work and small team reconnaissance work. So I was tasked to do the physical recce on the fuel installations and the landing spots in Namib, and my buddy was Corporal Pedrito. Now, Pedrito, also a Portuguese guy, but we did eventually our attack diving course together as well. A very capable and a very good guy. So in the at the workup for the actual action to take place at Namib, there was 3 targets identified. The 3 targets would be any vessels alongside the quay or in the harbor in Namib had to be sunk, and then the oil storage facilities had to be wiped out, as well as any locomotives that was in the harbor or in the shunting, not the shunting yards, but transporting the fuel to the front. So that was the 3 targets. Now each target, the diving team under command of Johan Hechter, they continued, getting ready their mines and, doing drills of typically what an attack diver would do. And then the landward team, we prepared different charges to take out the tanks, very similar to what we used in Kerslig, but newly designed mines so that the same incidences would not occur. And then was important, we also estimated that it could be possible that we could not literally penetrate the target and that we could attack the tanks in a standoff way. Now, what we did is EMLC assisted us, and they designed a RPG-7 rocket launcher stand that you could aim at the tanks. And obviously, they worked on the explosive heads and added aluminium power to that to detonate and give a more inflammable impact on the charges when it actually hit the tanks. And then charges to demolish the locomotives if we encountered the locomotives. Of course, so not going to go into detail, but all preparations was done in the Langebaan area again, and then we were aboard the SAS Tafelberg, and obviously the submarines a submarine went up with us. And at this stage, close to Namib, we transferred from the surface vessels onto the submarines. Myself, Pedrito, Pierre Limburg, and the harbor reconnaissance teams transferred to the submarines, and we would then execute our tasks deploying from the submarines. Now, just an interesting story as well. We had the chaplain at Special Forces HQ was a Dominee Sarel Visser, Padre Sarel Visser. He came from the West Coast, and he was just a star. And for operational experience, he requested if he could also deploy with us onto the submarine. And so said and so done, Oom Sarel deployed with us onto the submarine. Now, the Daphne class submarine is small, as I've said, and there's not space for extra people. So the Special Forces people, if they went on board the submarine, now the torpedo tubes in the nose or the forward part of the submarine is in such a way that you can actually put boards and mattresses, and then you have about 2 feet above you when up to the next torpedo tube, and that's where we used to sleep and stay. And Oom Sarel was also there, and all naval vessels, the big ones are, there's liquor available, and at certain stages, at the meal you could take wine or whatever. But on the submarine you could not take on liquor at all. But Oom Sarel, in his wisdom, took a bottle of whiskey with him. That was to actually encourage and give support to the operators. So he did it as a as a surprise for us. And yeah, was I'll come back to that now. But in any case, so Sarel was with us. So on the day we had to execute the reconnaissance, we were launched onto inflatables. Myself and Pedrito was dropped, and we recce'd the beach, recce'd the route in to the oil storage area, as well as to the locomotive yards and so on. All the defensive positions and the position of civilians, and we reconnoitred a safe route in, safe route out, and also identified alternative routes that could be used if something went wrong. So we were back. I think we were dropped off at about, let's say, 8-ish, 2000 hours, and we were collected again at about 3:30 the next morning, after we completed the route recce and the area recce. Whilst we were on land, Pierre and them once again scouted and saw that there was 5 vessels alongside the quays in Namib. So that was a good sign. So for the attack divers, there was good targets available to sink. We were ready, and we went back and we boarded the submarine again. Now, after recovering in the submarine, going down, taking off the Black is Beautiful and so on, and onto the torpedo tubes, Sarel took out his bottle of whiskey. So, he opened the bottle of whiskey and poured it into the lid, the proppy, the lid of the bottle of whiskey, and he passed it around to boost the morale. But now, Koos, on a submarine, it's actually a pipe. It's just a big pipe, and they generate oxygen and so on, so that it ventilates through the submarine. And now the smell of alcohol, gets absorbed into the air as well. And at this stage, the captain of the submarine, he came up to the front end of the sub, and he pulled open the curtain. We used to hang a curtain there, and Pierre was in command of the group there, and he called Pierre and he said, "Pierre, you know that the submarine is a dry vessel. It's a dry ship. Who of you are drinking what?" So, yeah, we had to tell him what Sarel did, but, he had to keep a straight face and, pretend very strict. I think he was very strict, but, he understood the context of it and, took it in that way. But yes, so that was an interesting thing. Of course, then we were transferred back to the surface vessels. We gave our reports in terms of the reconnaissance we did, and Pierre and them on their reconnaissance. And the decision was made. Hannes Venter, the OC of Recce, was in command of the whole operation. He decided that the next night would be, the execution night. Now, how it works on board the vessels, Koos, it all works on a timeline, a countdown system. So the big vessels would be out into the deep sea. Then they would start commencing, they call it a run-in, towards the land to get to a certain distance from the coast, from where the 4 Recce boats would deploy, and then take the raiding teams and the other teams in to do whatever they had to do. So everything was worked out on timelines. At that time, the run-in started at that rate of knots. At that time, this, and it just works on a countdown system. In any case, we reached the area, and then obviously there's times where the operators get ready, prepare their minds, the boat crews go up to the smaller boats, they start engines, they do this, that, and the other. It's a professional operation, and it's executed like that. Any case, that night, it was a bit windy. It was about the sea state 3-4. Now, sea state 3-4, I think 4 and up, we aborted, because then the sea is too choppy and it's risky to launch. And the risk of getting injuries and not getting the people properly on board the smaller vessels, and then for the smaller boats to actually drive or operate on sea, it just becomes too bumpy, and it just doesn't work. But I think it bordered on sea state 3-4, and then on the bridge of the Strike Raft, if we looked at the land through their very strong binoculars, you could see a lot of movement going on. There's a lot of vehicles moving up and down and so on. In any case, as the countdown started, and they had to start preparing, checking the hydraulic system, one of the Strike Raft saw that the hydraulic system was giving problems. So it was, it didn't go well. When the boat crews tested the engines, they start their engines on board to see if everything is fine. One of the engines of one of our Barracudas gave a problem. So we reached the cutoff time, or the launch time, and Honoris ordered abort, because that's very, very, very important. Now, I can jump back to Operation Argon, where Wynand and them was as well. They also had cut-off times. And I'm not going to comment further on that, but I do know very well that some of those cut times, went into a margin where they could have considered to actually abort and, try another night. But in any case, back to Drozdey, Honoris aborted, and we went back to the deep sea, as they used to call it, the lang gras, back into the shelter. On board the vessels, the systems, the hydraulic systems was fixed. The engine of the Barracuda was fixed, and everything was ready. The countdown started the next day, and the water was like a mirror. It was perfect conditions. There was a slight ripple on the water, because you don't actually want a sea that is, like a mirror, because then you get picked up very easily. So you want a bit of a ripple, especially for the boats and the divers, to conceal some of their movement. But it was a perfect night to launch the operation. So of course everything went fine. The boats launched. The offensive teams got on board, the diving team as well as the landward team, and the operation commenced. Without any problems, the landward raiding team was offloaded. One thing I want to mention, the steepness of the beach was the incline was a bit steep, and when you got off the boats, only your nose stuck out. Now we normally beach. You drive out the Barracuda onto the beach, you get off on dry land, you turn the boat around, and you push it back into the sea. But in that case, due to the incline of the beach, that was not done, and we had to get off into the sea. And it wasn't a problem, but it was unusual. So you were wet from head to toe when you actually started and commenced the operation. Of course, everything went well. We took the raiding team in. The offensive dive teams, they got to their position. They launched. They started their attack on the ships and the vessels that was alongside. And we first went on the land side. We first went past oil storage area to actually get to the locomotives where the locomotives were. When we got there, we saw that the locomotives that was actually there was only shunting locomotives. So, it would be useless to attack the shunting locomotives. So we aborted that. It would be a waste of time and risk. And we focused on setting up the charges to destroy the fuel depot. We saw that there was patrols actually actively patrolling the perimeter of the storage tanks. We cut the wire, we set up the RPGs with an anti-tampering device, and we had some spare, not spare, but the charges and the equipment we had to demolish the trains we had with us. So Dostijn, that was in charge of the landward party, he decided that we would mine some pylons, electrical pylons, and culverts and a minor bridge that led into the town of Namib. So said, so done. We went back, we were picked up, the exfiltration went fine, and we went back to the mother vessel. The diving teams, was one team encountered a problem, and they could not reach their target. But eventually, 3 vessels were mined. It was one Cuban vessel, and then 2 Russian vessels. So they did that. They were picked up safely, and we were all out. And then, as we reached the mother vessel and retrieved the smaller vessels or the boats, the charges started going off. Now, it's a nice sight to see if you're safely out at sea, and it's not like a Kerslig situation where you are actually, safely out at sea, and you see how the petrol dumps go up, and the ships are demolished and is sinking. You can't see that, but you can hear the charges going off. So that was a successful operation, but it was a very, very significant operation. Why? 2 Russian vessels was sunk, or they weren't sunk because the alongside the quays and the depth of the water there, you can't sink them. It's too shallow. So, but you punch the holes in them, and they get flooded with water, and the equipment and whatever gets destroyed by the seawater. And then the Cuban vessel, the Habana, actually started sailing out. And when the mines that was planted on the Habana detonated, she was in a deeper area, and she actually was sunk, literally sunk. Now, was the news of Russian vessels and a Cuban vessel attacked and sunk was received by Gorbachev, and he was on a visit in Poland. So he actually considered cutting his visit to Poland short, going back to Moscow, and to attend to this situation. He did not do that, and he left the situation in the hands of the Secretary General of the Communist Party to deal with. He liaised with the commander of the, what is it called, the fleet that was responsible for the Atlantic, or the Atlantic coast, and he gave an order to the 30th flotilla of the Russian fleet to go to Namib and to actually intervene and assist with the salvaging of the vessels that were sunk. Now, the Americans also, they were monitoring what was going on, and they actually intervened with their fleet they had, and prevented most of the Russian fleet actually going to Namib. So that operation, triggered an international cascade of actions. There was some of the mines that did not detonate, that was still left on one of the Russian vessels. So with the salvage operation, the Russian divers actually got hold of these mines, and they couldn't determine from where or what it was. But in any case, they said it couldn't be UNITA, it must be South Africans, and South Africa was implicated in the operation and the attack on naval vessels or commercial vessels. So in the Security Council in the United Nations, there was a emergency meeting held, and the Cubans actually said that their vessel that was sunk was loaded with food rations that was financed by the child welfare of the United Nations, etc., which was a story they concocted. And they requested, Russia and Cuba requested for extra sanctions against South Africa and, severe penalties and war damages and stuff like that. In the debate, they said that, they couldn't believe that the Cuban vessel actually had foodstuffs from the child fund, and it was placed under they didn't believe it. And in any case, the vote, the UN, the US and the UK voted against sanctions, and France abstained from voting. So with this operation was also the last seaward operation Recce would execute within the war, or in the sphere of the Bush War era. Why? Due to the national or the international repercussions that was going on, and then in that same era, Cuito Carnaval took place, and a few operations that actually saw the signing of the accords and the agreements for hostilities to stop in Angola. Of course, maybe just referring to another Recce operation, it's actually the only Recce operation that did not take place within the sea is Operation Coolidge. Now, Operation Coolidge was an operation to blow the bridge over the Carnaval River, that was also supplying a lot of, a very important logistical route. So under command of Fred Volker, I think he was a commandant, a lieutenant colonel at that stage, they launched an operation where they dived into or rowed down with kayaks, and at the stage dived to actually place charges on the bridge at Cuito Carnaval. Now, due to the flow of the river and the tempo of the river, they were compromised. The enemy had put up early warning systems in the water, barbed wire and cables and so on. And they were detected, the diving team were detected, and they could only partially destroy the bridge enough that it actually stopped for quite a period, the logistical supply. Then just the interesting thing, Fred Walker was wounded in I think the left upper arm, and then I mean those rivers are infested with crocodiles, and Staff Sergeant what's his name now, was actually gripped by a crocodile between his legs, and he was taken down, and he had a very bad experience, but he survived that. He actually stabbed the crocodile with his diving knife and got away. At the stage they had to carry on to the RV point. They wanted to walk, but his leg was so badly injured, that they decided to get back into the water, rather face the crocodiles than, the agony of walking. But Koos, while I'm mentioning this, it was a very, very daring operation by Recce, to such an extent that the whole team was summoned to the parliament in Cape Town, and they all gave feedback to I think P.W. Botha was the president at that stage, and for the daring operation, he ordered that each participant in that operation actually was awarded the Honoris Crux, and it is the single operation in the history of the South African era for the most Honoris Cruxes that was issued, or not issued, awarded to the people, and that was 12. So it's a very daring operation. The detail is in Dow and Are's book, and it was a great operation. Koos, that was pretty much the end of conventional type of participation by special forces. Now, during that time, the period 85 to 89, the internal situation changed a lot in South Africa. The ANC at that stage, the adversaries, by the means of MK, Mkonto Isizwe, launched a lot of operations internally. The Church Street bomb, Magoo's Bar, I think a lot of Wimpies was mined. I know there was a landmine campaign in the Northern Transvaal, and they really opened up and started terrorizing South Africa a lot. So with a conventional war in Angola inclining or declining, the focus was turned to actually detect and sort out the MK offensive within South Africa. Now, of course, in 86, 87, the intelligence services reported that the HQ, or the African headquarters of the ANC, was situated in Dar es Salaam. So Dar es Salaam, once again on the East Coast, the people looked at Recce because it was close to the sea, it was possible to infiltrate. And bear in mind, in 71, 72, I think it was Operation Starlight, where Koos Moorcroft and Woody and them did their operation. So, immediately they had the thought to actually infiltrate to Dar es Salaam again by submarine, and then land the teams to do the reconnaissance and whatever they had to do there. However, the intelligence services reported that due to the operation we had in Beira and the operations on the West Coast, the Russians actually deployed submarines patrolling the Mozambican Strait, and so deploying there with a Daphne class submarine was seen as to be very risky. On top of that, they reported that the United States satellites was actually scanning and keeping a very, very close eye on the Mozambican Strait to actually pick up the submarines and to determine the whereabouts of that. So the risk was too high to actually launch a seaward operation to deploy somebody to Dar es Salaam. Now, of course, in one of the previous episodes, when I was at the academy, I mentioned that I had a tour through Malawi. Now, the planning for an operation into Dar es Salaam took place at Donkergat. Now, at that stage, Brigadier Serfontein, Chris Serfontein, he was the Chief of Staff of Special Forces and responsible for operations, was in Langebaan. So, then all these things about the submarines and the satellites and this, that, and the other was discussed. And that afternoon, we went back to the Langebaan side, and we were having a drink in the officers' mess. And I said to Brigadier Serfontein, I told him the story about my experience through Malawi. And I said to him, I met so many people that actually went to Dar es Salaam and, went around there and visited all the places. And I'll execute that thing. Just give me a passport to enter Tanzania. And he listened to me, and he asked me a few questions and so on. And the next morning, he called Hannes, which was the commander. And he called me, and we were in the office in the Langebaan side, and we discussed this thing. So I told Hannes about this story, and I mean, the covert operations is not a unknown thing, but in Special Forces, there was a Operation Barnacle, where the guys had false passports and executed certain operations. So it wasn't a new thing or a funny thing, but within 4 Recce, it would be the first time that something like, although other passports were used to actually go to Israel and Italy and so on to develop our diving capabilities. In any case, it was decided that they will exploit the idea of obtaining a alias identity so that we could move into Tanzania. They being Hannes Venter and Brigadier Serfontein got in contact with counterintelligence and covert collection department, and eventually they decided that they would give me the chance to do that operation. In any case, now I knew nothing about aliases and the world of the spies. To me that belonged to 007 and those people. What I knew was 32 bush warfare and Special Forces Recce warfare. But as it may be, they said they'll get hold of a alias passport for me, and I had to develop a second identity. Now, of course, yes. So I obtained, or they got hold of a temporary passport of a third country in Europe. So I had to develop a pseudo, not a pseudo, alias identity, and they gave me some guidelines and what to do and what to look for, and the name mustn't be too far from your own name, and your date of birth must be. So a lot of pointers and so on. I started planning and working on a alias. To cut a long story short, in terms of the planning part of that, I left for Europe. I went to the country which passport I was given, and for the purpose of this conversation, I'm not going to reveal that country. But in any case, I was received on the other side by obviously people from the intelligence community in that country, and I was put into a hotel. And after about 5 days, they gave me not a temporary passport, but a real passport of that country. But it was a forged passport. So, but based on true identities of people in that country. So it was decided that I would have to use that passport, A, to see if it works, and B, see if I could get to Tanzania. So I started. Now, remember, in those days, the years we are talking, there was no Google, there was no GPSs, there was no satellite telephones. So I actually flew to London, and in London went to a travel agent and said to them I would like to do a tour to Tanzania and so on. And they said they've got just a package for me. So it was Encounter Overland. It's they still exist to this day. So they did tours in Pakistan and India and also into Africa. So they had a tour where they did the whole of Tanzania, the Serengeti, everywhere through Tanzania, and then they would go into Rwanda and Burundi, and eventually, just before the end of the tour, you would climb Kilimanjaro, and that was the tour. So I reported that back to Pretoria, and the guy say, book yourself on the tour. So, of course, my first experience was then to take this Encounter Overland tour. I think it was about 6 weeks, and but I was very, very mission focused in terms of I had to determine where the HQ of the ANC was in Dar es Salaam. But as the tour routine and program went, that didn't allow time in Dar es Salaam to actually go and sniff out wherever that was. But as it may be, the address or what I was given was Rosie Mansions number 10. Now, how do you determine where Rosie Mansions number 10 is? Because that was the ANC's location of the HQ. But Rosie Mansions was a apartment block or a business block, and so on. So we had one afternoon off where you could go and either swim or bathe or whatever. And I took a taxi and I said to this guy, find Rosie Mansions number 10. So he, was a bit confused and he asked everywhere. And eventually he took me to Rosie Mansions number 10, which was like a apartment block. And luckily there was a bar close to that, and typically local shops and so on. I sat there, drank a beer, and okay, now I knew where Rosie Mansions number 10 was. Long story short, went through this tour, which was a great experience, and acting as typically what I saw in Malawi. And I learned a lot in terms of the other people that toured with us, but a brilliant tour through Tanzania. Eventually climbed under the alias name, climbed Kilimanjaro to Uhuru Peak, and learned a lot about Tanzania. Then I went back to South Africa, and I reported back that this is the way to go. You've got absolute freedom to move as and when, and the people are not necessarily hostile or whatever. Then Project Ivory was registered. Now, Project Ivory had the intention or the mission of Operation Ivory as a registered special forces operation within Recce, was to establish freedom of movement into Africa. And that would be done by means of covert operations, by identified individuals obtaining alias passports and then infiltrating into these countries. So that was a top secret project within Reconnaissance Commando, and I was the commander there, and I had two people with me. Queiroz, which I've spoken about because he's a Portuguese guy, and then another Portuguese guy, David Rodrigues. So they had actually authentic Portuguese passports. So for them, it was relatively easy to, adopt or use that and actually move. But I had to, get a new name, and then it was decided that I would go and establish. I did it we did it very professionally. Because my alias father and mother, their names, what they did, where they were, what they worked, what their addresses was in the country where the passport I carried, where they stayed, where they were born, etc. So back in Europe, I actually went to all those places. I actually knocked on the doors of the places where my alias parents lived, and said to the people, I'm the son of who lived here. They know, and no. So I just, wanted to see what it looks like and so on. So that if I got caught somewhere or whatever, I could say I stayed in that address, and I could actually tell them exactly what their house looked like, etc. So, we spend a lot of time in building up your alternative identity. Now, for the spies and the people of covert collection and so on, this is not a new story, but for a true soldier, this was a new experience. Now, of course, you know, um, going from Frans Fourie to, let's say, Joe Soap, Joe Soap has a whole life and a whole history, and Frans Fourie has a whole life and a whole history. So to actually build up a alternative identity, you really have to, keep your wits together. Now, at that stage, Koos, I don't know if you remember, some of the people out there might remember, in the early 80s, an incident occurred where 4 South Africans was captured in London, and it was referred to the Covington 4. Now, the Covington 4, I think they brought some, under the UN sanctions, they brought some missile technology from Israel or somewhere in the world, and they would fly via London and back to South Africa. And they were actually caught in London, and they were kept there for quite a long time, put in jail, and I think they were prosecuted there, for breaking the sanctions, etc. But when they were freed, there was a Dr. Albert Jansen. He's a psychiatrist in the medical services. So he debriefed them and took them through their psychological processes after being jailed and so on. But he also drew up a whole list of do's and don'ts and whatever, if you adopted a alias, and what to do and what not to do. So I got involved with Brigadier Jansen, and then Eben Barlow. Eben Barlow at that stage also was involved with executive outcomes and the stuff he was doing. He was also into that field. So myself and Evan bumped and rubbed shoulders again, and I actually, worked out courses to train other people that would join my team as the covert reconnaissance team info. And, we developed a whole series of curricula and whatever, based on not spy technology from the intelligence services, but by my experience, what I was taught by Eben, what I was taught by, or told by Brigadier Jansen, and so on. So, dead letter boxes and, the normal communication stuff, yes, we were taught and learned, but I drafted a course and developed a course specifically on the ways what I thought was right. Now, I'm saying this because we all did. I presented these courses at Recce, and up until we stopped that well into the 90s, after the elections in '94, because none of the covert operators in Recce was ever uncovered or caught or unmasked anywhere. And we deployed throughout Africa. We deployed throughout Europe, and we did a lot of operations. So somewhere we must have done something right, and I maintain to this day the reason why we were never caught. We were never taught the same stuff the spies were taught. So we didn't act like spies. We didn't do what spies would do. And I think I think a lot of people picked us up and they said, no, yeah, these guys can't be spies. No, they just can't be. They're too stupid, But in any case, we managed to do it our way, and we were very, very successful. Okay, that was established, and then back to Tanzania. In Tanzania, that's written in books, so I'm going to mention that. We formed a company in Portugal because Keros and Rods was in Portugal, and we could establish a company. We established an import and export company in Portugal, and then we went to Tanzania. In Tanzania, we established a branch of our company in Portugal, and through the intelligence services, we learned, that in the ANC camps, they lacked proteins. They got a lot of other foodstuffs and satsa and maize meal and whatever, but they lacked proteins. So, we said, okay, what proteins can, that was our route in, to actually, go to the bases or establish a setup where we could provide proteins to the ANC bases. And the way we would do that is by means of catching fish. So we established a fishing company in Tanzania and Dar es Salaam, small scale, and we did a lot of research on shallow water trawling, where we would trawl a system very simple, which you could use in freshwater lakes as well as in the sea, then dry the fish, and then that was a source of protein. Was so said, so done, and we did that, established that, and later on another person, Kiki Suarez, joined our team, and we built it up like that. Was then at the stage there would have been in Arusha, the top structure of the ANC would have a planning conference in Arusha. So I just want to go one step back. With a covert capability we developed, each other unit on their own developed a similar type of thing. So at the HQ level, we established an air wing, but it was also a covert air wing. So there were Cessnas bought and helicopters bought and so on, which would provide tactical air support to the covert operations into the countries we were working. So, I literally wrecked each and every runway strip in Tanzania for getaways, for whatever. So up to this day, I know Tanzania like the palm of my hand. I can drive around there anytime without a map. It's changed a bit, but roads and so on doesn't change that much. But so we really had a very good infrastructure, and then obviously the base we used for operating from was Malawi, which I toured. Malawi, where I backpacked into the Nyika Plateau. In the Nyika Plateau, there's a national game reserve with a landing strip, and I mean, it's so remote, so little people come there and so on. So, you know, we used the Nika Plateau and the runway strip as a launching pad for many operations. You know, we also flew in weapons, ammunition, whatever into that area, and then we would use it into the countries we went into. Of course, back to the Arusha thing. We went to Arusha, the international conference center there, established. We saw that all the, you know, the delegates of the ANC actually arrived there. We established exactly in which hotels they stayed, and we had several means to actually attack or eliminate them. Now, of course, you know, if you, as I've said, there was no, you could send a fax. You know, the fax systems work, but you know, you don't in a coveted way. You know, we got messages through to our back HQ, but you know, sensitive operations like that, we didn't do that. So we would rather, you know, fly out for 2 days and, you know, come back and be back within a week and get the clear orders and briefings and whatever. But it was the president of Tanzania would open this conference in Arusha. So it was decided that we would not take offensive action or eliminate anybody at that conference, as it would create an international incident, and it could, you know, obviously it would be focused to the security forces in South Africa. But once again, learned a lot, understood how the ANC actually, you know, worked, how they traveled, what they did, etc. Of course, then on my way back from Arusha to Dar es Salaam, I contracted malaria and I got very ill. So I was recovering, and then I just want to, on my notes here, get the date. In any case, it was a Christmas Eve was it 87, the 24th of December 87. Myself and my buddy, small team buddy at that stage, John Haynes, who had a British passport and could also travel, decided we're going to have a meal at the Kilimanjaro Hotel in Dar es Salaam. And we went to the top floor, you know, sat at the table, nice table overlooking the harbor. And, you know, I think we just ordered our second drink. 3 people came and sat on the table next to us. Now, that's not more than 2 meters from us. And as they were, you know, going down to sit, it was a white guy, a black guy, and a black lady. So as they was going to sit down, the white guy, very, you know, neat and respectful, you know, he said, well, Thabo, Zanella, you know, please sit down. And when they said Thabo and Zanel, you know, the penny dropped. So to cut a long story short, it was Thabo Mbeki, the later president of South Africa, and Zanele, which was a lady which was very high up in the ANC. The guy was a Scandinavian, and they sat there and they just started talking. Now, was the Scandinavian was actually briefing them on how the Scandinavians would support them in their respective bases. You know, in Morogoro, in Iringa, at Nachingwea, and, you know, they were just blabbing along and talking freely about a lot of stuff. Now, I always carry a handkerchief with me. And as it may be, I had a handkerchief, and I thought, you know, I'm not going to remember all this stuff. So I started making notes on my handkerchief. Now, I wrote the handkerchief on this side and on the other side, full of information that was passed on that day. I mean, Thabo Mbeki would respond and, you know, talk about what what the ANC was going to do, how they were going to shift, and when they are going to shift their HQ from Dar es Salaam to Zambia, and what the basis and the challenges was, and it came up, the feeding and the nutrition of what they required and what they wanted and so on. So it was a coincidence that night, but the value of the information we gathered that night was incredible, and actually opened up the whole venue channel of actually monitoring in a covert way the actions and the places the ANC and the MK did. So yes, in Iringa, it came up that there was a training base called the Joseph Dadu training base, and obviously down in Nachingwea, which is close to the border with Mozambique. They used that base as a staging base for MK soldiers to infiltrate into Mozambique and then down to Swaziland, into South Africa, and the different routes. So due to that incident, all those things were uncovered and revealed, and we could really in a preactive way in all places place covert people to monitor the movement and the actions of the MK and the ANC. Of course, then we went down to Nachingwea. In Nachingwea, because they mentioned that the protein thing was such a critical thing, and the rations the guys had to carry and so on. We visited the fish markets, and really established where we could buy fish and how much it cost, and so that we could actually buy, take it to the ANC base and sell them fish. I wouldn't be the front guy going there. I mean, they would just, compromise me. But in any case, as we were going around there, we were sitting at the sea, and a guy in civilian clothes approached us, and he asked to see our passports. And, we said, well, who are you to ask us to see our passports? And he says, don't ask questions. Present your passports or you will be jailed. So, long story short, presented the passports, and he said, come with me. So obviously it was a person from the intelligence services, and myself and Rods was separated, and we were interrogated for about 4 hours. But like seriously, taking off our clothes, sitting naked there. But our cover stories was of such a nature that then they would leave us alone, and obviously they would compare notes as to what was Rod saying, what was I saying, and so on. But eventually they let us go. So it was once again a very strenuous test on us. And if they catch you and jail you as a spy, they throw away the key, and that's it. Excuse me. So the reconnaissance in terms of determining ANC training bases went very, very well, which was a huge success. And within the intelligence community in South Africa, and as the years carried on, and behind the curtains and behind the doors, the negotiations between the National Party and the ANC started taking place. I think the negotiators and so on, in many cases, had so much information, real information, that they stunned the negotiators of the ANC. They couldn't believe that, what they heard was actually true. They denied it. They said it's not true. Yeah, it's lies. But we knew it was true. And I was told on one occasion, you know, where they actually put down a photograph and said, well, you've just said it's not true. Here's the photographic proof of that, you know. Then their minds just started going and said, this boere, you know, they don't know how they are doing this. Koos, then Iringa. Iringa is the area where the Joseph Dadu camp was. Now, I literally spent, me and my team, more than 6 months looking for this base. You know, we really could not. We sniffed, we drove wherever, but, you know, we couldn't find this place. And then towards the, let me see, southeast of Iringa, the one day we drove around there and there was tea plantations, you know, very nice tea plantations. And, you know, we went there, looked, and the people were very friendly. They showed us around and, you know, how they actually made the little plants and planted them and harvested tea and so on. And the next day we approached the same tea area, but from the west. No, from the east. The previous day we went from the west. So I was driving down this road, and there was a well driven twee-spoor paadjie, 2-track path, and I decided I'm gonna drive in here. Drove in there, and as I came to a 90-degree bend, when I turned the corner, there was a big tent standing in the bush, and further in the road, there was a lot of soldiers formed up in the road. It was about 10 o'clock in the morning. So, you know, obviously, we stumbled upon a base. So, you know, I just drove on, and Rods that was with me, you know, got the camera in a clandestine way, also, you know, taking photographs, and I drove up to about 10 meters from where this squad was standing. Now, that was more than 50, 60 soldiers in, you know, in 3 ranks, typically military style. And, you know, somebody came up with an AK, stopped us and said, hey, what are you doing here? And they started questioning us. You know, I said, well, I'm X, and I'm driving down to the tea plantations, because now I know exactly where the tea plantations is. And at the tea plantation, they actually showed us the road up the hill, which was where this base now was. So I told them, no, I'm driving down to the tea plantation, and you know, what's going on here? So they said, no, this is not the road to the tea plantation. I said, well, it is the road to the tea plantation. I know it's the road to the tea plantation, and I'm a researcher in the tea, and I'm working with a project on the tea. Because, cut a long story short, I convinced this guy, bullshit baffles brains. And these, now, of course, this is hairy, you know, it's hairy times. If they catch you there, you know, you know, you have a problem. But of course, I drove past these 50, 60 guys, and there was a big gate. They opened the gate for me. I had to fill in my name and vehicle registration into the book. They opened it and they said, drive through here, and at the other gate, don't ever drive this road again. You know, drive the other roads, but don't drive this road again. I said, of course, I won't drive this road again. So, of course, there it was big open fields where they, you know, had a lot of heavy weapons, 122s, 23 mils, 14.5s, mortars. So obviously, this group of soldiers were doing heavy weapon training, and there was a big board, you know, the Yusuf Dadu camp. We actually took a photograph of that, and that was also a huge success for us, because this base was always on the books of the intelligence people, but nobody knew where it was. So we managed to actually find that course. Of course, then the ANC shifted their HQ to Lusaka in Zambia, and there was a lot of pressure, and I'm not too sure what the pressures was in Tanzania, but the ANC started making use of Uganda and, you know, some other countries to do their training and whatever they had to do. So the information was passed, you know, that there was training going on in Uganda. Myself and Keros flew to Uganda, hired a vehicle, and we started looking for these places. Now, same story was we eventually, you know, found the bases, the Kaweweta training base. Now, Kaweweta training base eventually in '94 was happened to have the greatest component of MK cadres that was still training, you know, when there was a government change. So the biggest group of MK trained soldiers externally actually came from that base in Uganda. But you know, we managed to pick that up and report that back to our HQs. Was then Zambia. In at this stage, there was going to be the complete top structure of the ANC. Oliver Tambo, all the people were going to have a conference in Lusaka. So I was tasked to go and, you know, once again, recce all the facilities they had in Lusaka. I think Oliver Tambo had a house in a certain place where he lived and stayed, which we did. But the story I want to tell was I, at the stage in London, I booked a ticket to, I think I wanted to fly back to Tanzania. And at the British Airways office, I had a little bag. My passport was in there and travel documents and so on. But that was, I was still traveling on that fake passport I was initially issued. And of course, up to this day, I can't believe that it happened, but it happened. For a moment, I always keep my hand on my possession, or I have it physically in my hand. But I put it down, and with a blink of an eye, a pickpocketer or somebody grabbed my little bag. My passport was gone. My travel documents was gone. A certain amount of cash and whatever was in that bag. This was in the British Airways office in one of their offices in London. So there I was without any travel documents, with anything with me. What to do now? So you are really lost then. I mean, I'm actually a spy. You know, how do I get out of this? Of course, I just decided I'll go to the embassy of the passport I was holding, and I would go to them and tell them what happened. Now, this is also, you know, opening up your ribs for, you know, as old General Kat Liebenberg and Wim Joep always said, you know, you walk into the mouth of the lion. But I did that, went to the embassy. I told them what happened. And, you know, they said, okay, what's your name? Blah, blah, blah. You know, they put it into their computer, and not long afterwards, they said, give us about 3 hours and come and fetch your passport. So, of course, what that showed us. Now, I just want to, I didn't mention it just now. When I established myself in this town, when I built up my my alias, I actually cut myself with a knife, you know, a proper wound which required stitches, you know, and I went to the hospital and I built up a medical record. I registered myself as a organ donor. You know, I did several blood when you donate blood and so on. So and I think that was a very big turning point for me, is to know that you know, the embassy in London of the country of which I adopted the alias actually issued a real, true passport at that embassy. And there I had a new passport, which was legit, issued in London and so on. But now it was new, it didn't have all the stamps and what in it. So, that was a very big test that we passed. And in any case, then, when I got that document again, I was very, very happy. I also did a driver's course in the country of my alias, and I obtained a true driver's license, and everything was fine. So I had to go and get that again, and the HQ said, travel Europe, go and just get stamps in your passport. So that was also interesting. So I think the only country in Europe I haven't visited was Norway. I went to all the countries in Europe, and those days they still put in stamps in your passport. And I flew to a few. I flew to Ethiopia and Morocco and places like that to get other stamps in my passport, to go back to actually do the real reconnaissance stuff in the countries that mattered. Okay, I want to get back to Zambia. Zambia, they would have this the conference. So I had to go to Lusaka, and I opted to travel via Moscow. Now, you must now understand that in those days, I think the Iron Curtain only collapsed in November 89. The Eystergordijn came down. Now, that was before that. So Mother Russia was still Mother Russia. And, I said, okay, how can I get to Lusaka? Went to a travel agent. They said, no, you can fly, Aeroflot to Moscow, and from Moscow you can fly to Luanda, and from Luanda you can fly to Lusaka. Or you can, and they gave the different routes. And I said, Luanda, give me that one. Because in Luanda, you had to stand over for about 6 hours before the aircraft departed to Lusaka. So, of course, I informed HQ back in Pretoria, I'm going to fly via Moscow to Luanda and then into Lusaka. Now, then that stage, it was General Joubert. General Joubert said to me, nou speel jy met die leeu se bal. Now you are playing with the einies of the line. Why do you want to do it that way? I said, well, sir, my passport is now legit. I'm confident. I want to see what the system is in Moscow, and I want to, I can go to Luanda. And they said, okay, just know, if you take that route and you are caught anywhere, we will deny, the South African government, the army, everybody will deny that you are South African, because you are legit in terms of that passport, you are an alien. So I said, sir, if that's the way, that's the way. And of course, yeah, I did it that way. But Top Gun, the movie Top Gun, just came out. So the night before I flew back, or flew that route, excuse me, I watched the movie Top Gun. Now, the main song is, I think, Highway to the Danger Zone, and it's a very nice song. And I actually had a Walkman, and I bought a little tape. So and I booked on Aeroflot and flew with Aeroflot from London to Moscow, and we overnight go through the whole immigration system, customs system. Now there you really nip. It's Russia. They have mirrors behind you. You climb up onto a thing, and they really interrogate you. But I was just in transit. So I pleaded so dumb and stupid. once again, I could not be a spy. I'm too stupid. But in any case, so it was very interesting going through the immigration system in Moscow. I actually at the duty free which they had, I bought 2 little sculptures of Stalin. Also a story for later, because when I came back, I actually mounted that and I gave one to the OC of Special Forces and to Hannes Venter. But in any case, next day we departed for Luanda, and of course I sat in Luanda airport for more than 6 hours. And I watched all the aircraft that came in, the Cubans trooping in, and offloading and everything. So the amount of the defensive systems of Luanda, I could, all that information I could gather and bring back. And the info, the approach routes and the takeoff routes of the aircraft was very important, because when I came back, I said, guys, if we park a submarine there, in the Bay of Luanda, and we get the flight patterns of the aircraft coming in, you just pop up, put me on a inflatable with a SAM 7 or 2, and you just down aircraft, and the submarine comes up, picks you up, and you were gone. So we developed a lot of potential operations like that as well. Of course, back to the story of eventually to Lusaka. When I arrived in Lusaka, my baggage was lost, and I never got my baggage again. So I had to buy, I think Aeroflot gave us like $10 to buy whatever you needed, but that was okay. Of course, I did the recce. I was on my own, but Rods infiltrated via another route. So he was in Lusaka as well. So we never met up, but we each did the recce on our own, and gathered all the information we had to gather. Where we would put out stopper groups, etc., and the job was done. I think I had 2 days left before I had to fly out back to Europe, and I took a trip down to Livingston to go and see the Victoria Falls. And once again, it's all coincidence, but it just shows you the capability that we developed to actually travel like that. When we came into land at Livingston, the pilot actually, flew over the falls and so on, actually showing the tourists or the passengers much more than they paid for. And I spotted a few SAM 7, SAM 6 positions which the intelligence people weren't aware either. So the amount of information which we gathered in the reconnaissance or through that method was huge. Of course, then I just for a brief moment I want to stop there. There's a lot of people that say, yeah, if you do covert these things, it's you stay in hotels and you do this, that. Yes, you do. But the small teams by the names of Andre Diedrichs, Neves, Koos Stadler, and those, they did brilliant operations, hiding away, painting themselves black, and so on. But of course, in many of the reconnaissance work we did, I did, and my team did, whilst deployed covertly to get to a position, entailed exactly that. Many a night, I would put my fingers into diesel cars, exhausts, and get the black, and paint myself black, and do a typical small team infiltration into the bases and the storage places, especially in Tanzania, where they had their logistical build-up and supplies. So we combined a true small team reconnaissance. We combined it with the covert stuff. So, for anybody that think it was only staying out in hotels and so on, yes, it's true, which is risky in a certain way as well. But we also executed with that the small team operations. Was then I think about a year went past, and this or this conference that had to take place in Lusaka was still on the maps. Then they sent Jack Greef, I know, also went to Zambia at the stage. He also did a reconnaissance just to confirm what myself and Rod's the information we brought back, and everything tied up, and the plan was made. So there was an operation planned where the total top structure of the ANC in Lusaka would have been wiped out. Now we built the exercises and the preparation we did in Doppies. We actually established a helicopter admin area in the Kafui Game Reserve, where the choppers would refuel, because we would go straight in from Doppies to Lusaka, do the job. The choppers would go to the Kafui Game Reserve, replenish, refuel there, and then come back and pick us up and come out. Then we were bombed up. We built mock-ups. We exercised. Everything was ready. We boarded, I think it was 4 Oryx helicopters, and we were ready to fly out. Once again, I was sitting in one of the technical, the tech seats, as in from the 32 battalion days, to help navigate, show where to land, and so on. And we took off. We were in flight for about 15 minutes, and I was in the lead chopper. They flew in a formation, and at the stage, I could hear the conversation, certain conversation that was going on between the pilots and the tech, the loadmaster. But on the radio part, I couldn't hear. So I was basically on the intercom and not on the radio communication. But as we were flying course, we started flying slower, and at the stage, it was like going into a hover. And then, he communicated to the other choppers, and we turned around and we went back to Doppies. So what had happened is in flight, the top structure of the Defence Force, and I think, I'm making the deduction. On ministerial level, they decided to cancel the operation. So we flew back to Doppies, landed there. Nobody knew what was going on, neither did I. We were hauled back into the conference, not a conference room, open area. And I think it was Colonel Besbier. He said the operation is aborted, and it's not going to take place. So of course we refer to the operation that never was. Now I think if that operation went on and it was executed successfully, I think the whole path of whatever happened in South Africa could have been completely different. Now if is a horrible thing to say, but yes, it was the operation planned to be executed. We were on our way there to execute it, and it was called off. Of course, I want to conclude that we still did a lot of other smaller operations in Africa as well as in South Africa, targeting the MK. and unveiling and uncovering the whereabouts of the ANC top structure. In 93, course, yeah, I got married in 89. So, you know, I operated all the years as a single. Then in 89, I got married. Yeah, in 93, I was the acting, the acting second in command. Julius Engelbrecht, that was the second in command of Recce, did his naval staff course, so I stood in for him. And then in 94 course, I did my staff course. Now in 93, and I think General Bormann spoke about the staff courses, but so that brings me to the end of my 4 Recce career. A lot of other things took place as well, course, but that once again is the, you know, the main stuff. Course, yeah, just on our staff course, it was an experiment they did, and I don't know if General Bormann is aware of it, but we did afstandsonderrig. Wat is afstandsonderrig? Part-time, no, not part-time, distant learning. Distant learning. So in 93, we actually did the distant learning part of the staff course, and in 94, the year of the election, we did the residential part of the staff course at the Army College in, yeah. So it's been said that it's probably the longest academical staff course that ever took place in the training part of the Army, to be confirmed by the powers to be, but we know it's like that. Was I think I'm going to stop there. I just want to relate to you know, at the end of staff course is an interesting course. It's grueling, it's nice. You get tired, you know, you work long hours, but it's a good course. Because at the end of the course, you go for a tea drinking session with a OC. Now, it was never revealed, you know, what your position was. Did you come first? Did you come last? Did you come second, or whatever? But we qualified as, you know, in the red line as a operational. You could take command of a brigade or a battle formation, and course, then when I went for my tea drinking session with a brigadier, we had a nice chat, and he said to me, he offered me, he said, I was nominated and I could choose if I wanted to do the British staff course. So that would entail that you can take your wife, if you had a family, you can take them, they accommodate them, and then for a year you do the British staff course in, I'm not too sure if it's at Sandhurst or wherever they do it in the UK. Now that was a huge honor to me. It was a privilege, but you know, I had to think about this. You know, I was smacked. You know, I didn't understand why they would actually ask me to do it, because I don't think I was the brightest guy on staff course. I know I did well, but I don't think I was, you know, actually the guy that would have, you know, should be bestowed that honor to do that. But as it may be, was Colonel Venter, I think he was then made a temporary brigadier or a substantive brigadier, was in charge of special forces at that stage. That very same day, you know, we had a big function always, you know, when staff course is finished, Chief of the Army presents the red lanyards, and, you know, it's a big do. But Honoris Venter came to me and, you know, he asked me if I've been to the teerdrink sessie with Colonel Loubser, Koos Loubser, he very great guy. And I said yes, and I, you know, informed him that I was offered this thing. He says, well, Frans, you have to choose now, because Andre Diedrichs, who's the OC of 1 Recce at that stage, was resigning, and we are offering you the post as officer commanding 1 Recce. So, Koos, I had to make the choice to actually accept either command of 1 Reconnaissance Regiment or 1 Recce at that stage, but they changed the name. It was 451 Parachute Brigade Battalion. That funny stuff. I didn't talk about that, but in any case, so I had to make the choice, and I discussed it with my wife Helene, and to me it was I want to say a bigger honor to take command of one of the Special Forces units. And I know Pierre Franken then went on the British staff course, and he also later on did very, very well. So I think, it opens doors for you if you did the foreign staff course as well. But I opted to become the OC of 1 Special Forces Regiment. Of course, I'm going to stop there. I think if you're going to allow me another episode, I will talk about my my time as commander of 1 Recce, because I think that's a very interesting phase, because 94 was the change of government, and the integration of the different forces and the integration of the non-statutory special forces into the South African Special Forces took place, and 1 Recce was responsible for that. And I was then the commander of 1 Recce, so I had to deal with the integration and the retraining, etc., of the post, or the post 94 Special Forces. I think it's a very interesting era. Brigadier Borman also at the end of that year became the OC of Special Forces. So I would then serve under the command of Brigadier Borman as a unit commander, and he was the OC then. Which is an interesting story to tell as well, and a few things happened until I left the military. Of course, I'm going to stop there. Once again, I think I've slaughtered a lot of time. So if there's any questions, thank you very much.
I have to say to you, service is so utterly fascinating. I mean, if I keep quiet, you have to know you're onto something great here. I was just listening and listening. But I do have a few questions, if you don't mind.
Please.
It's a bit technical, but it came up in my mind. I know that at 4 Recce you use specialized equipment to dive. I don't think it's a normal scuba which makes bubbles. It's called a rebreather.
Yeah.
How deep can you go with that thing?
Was I'm picking back into my mind now, but we dive on pure oxygen, and it's a rebreather, and I can't remember the exact name of the system we used, but it was an Italian system. I think the chemical you use in it is Protol, or it's something like that, but it's a granular type of thing you put into the system. So you have a very small oxygen tank. So you breathe you breathe oxygen into a bag, and you rebreathe that, because you can rebreathe it a few times, but it circulates through that chemical, that granule, and it actually extracts the CO2. So, Koos, I think oxygen becomes toxic to your body when you go below 3 or 4 meters. So the typical depth of a attack diver would be at about not more than 3 meters. So it's actually very shallow, But you know, three meters is 3 meters, and if your weather and the ripple effect on the surface of the water you dive in, you know, you can't be detected. But yes, you do not blow bubbles. It's called a rebreather, and you know, there's no bubbles comes up.
How do you navigate on the water? I mean, how do you know where you are?
Yeah, of course, that is a I don't want to call it a specialized, but you have a depth meter, obviously, and you have a compass. So it's a diving compass, which you either attach to your left arm. You can, you know, you wear it as a with your watch as on a watch system. And then what you literally do is you surface and you take a compass bearing on the target to where you are diving, like you would do in the bush. You know, you take a compass bearing, it's 270 degrees or whatever, and you walk on 270. So what you do is you surface, you take a bearing onto your direction or target, and then you know you keep your arm steady like that, and you go down, and you navigate. You keep the phosphor lights on your bearing. You know, there's dials you set, and then you keep it on your bearing. At later stages, we had a navigation board, because if you dive like this with your right arm straight and your left arm in a 90 degrees angle, you have to keep like that to have a set, you know, that there's no deviation. But we also had a diving board. It's a perspex board where the compass is on, and you can, you know, write a lot of bearings and distance and whatever on that. So you swim with this board, and once again, you know, you keep your degrees, which is on the set on the compass, and that's how you navigate. No GPS or maps, Google Maps. No, it doesn't work down there.
It seems to me, I remember you telling us in the first episode that you kind of swim before you could walk almost. And you love water. I mean, I know you had underwater polo or something colors as well. We'll put that badge thing up here. Would that be the same of hockey? That's right. That's right. Would that be the same of a typical Recce operator? Would he also have like a swimming background where he just loves the water, he wants to dive?
Of course, you remember I referred to coat hangers. So if I look back in my life, yes, you know, to me, I've always been, you know, as you say, I could probably swim before I walk. You know, I just loved water sport, and I enjoyed scuba diving and, you know, spearfishing and all that stuff. But I don't think everybody, you know, we had a lot of black operators, of course, that became divers, attack divers. Now, for most black guys, and I'm not talking derogatively now. You know, it's just the way you grow up and the environment you are brought up. They're not used to swimming, and especially the sea. You know, that place can become a very intimidating place. You know, if you out at sea, you can't see the land. It's dark. You know, in your mind, you think all the great whites are waiting for you with an open mouth. So, you know, psychologically, especially if you jump into the sea, you know, from an aircraft at night, and you jump into the sea, it's pitch black dark, and you have to join up with a Strike Raft or the submarines or whatever. You know, it's quite the intimidating thing. If you stand in the door, it's pitch black down there, and you know, you launch yourself and you land in the water. But to directly answer your question, no, I don't think everybody is naturally inclined to dive and so on. But I think the training program which you go through when you join Recce is of such a nature that it in a very instructive way, you know, launches you into the maritime environment. I don't know if I answer your question, Chris.
Yeah, that's it. And I know it's a very very thorough course as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you really know what you're doing by the time it's done with you. But I've heard a few stories, I don't know if it's true, but that it's actually possible for you to enter a submarine or exit a submarine through the torpedo tubes, once they're empty,
Yes.
of course. Have you
Yes.
ever done that?
Chris, I personally know I haven't done that. But the way it works, Chris, is you would get into the tube. Now the tube is sealed in front and at the back, and then they would, you know, at the back seal it and then open the front door or flood the torpedo tube. Now, obviously, it all revolves around pressure and depth, etc., etc. But that's basically how it works, Chris. So you would get into the torpedo tube, they flood the torpedo tube, open the front port, and then you just dive out. It sounds very simple. It's, you know, if you're claustrophobic and those things, you know, it doesn't work, but that's in principle how it works, Chris. And then obviously there's more sophisticated methods they use. Yes.
Yes, I think the new ones, the new submarines will have dive chambers on them.
Yeah.
So you
Correct.
can exit under the water, but it seems to me that in your time, it was mostly the submarine would surface, only for
Yes.
a few seconds. You people jumped
Yes.
out.
Yes.
I suppose your rubber ducks and things were strapped to the deck.
Yeah.
Unleash it, get it to blow up, I mean, to inflate. And then off
Yes.
you go, and that submarine goes down again.
Yes. 3
That's it.
minutes maximum. You know, 3 minutes to surface, undo the inflatables with the compression hoses. It's inflated. The motor are put up, and then it dives. You know, and the guys that's actually on, you know, you out of the tower onto the deck, and you know it goes. So you know, and you do a lot of exercising, of course, but you know, it's possible, and we've done that.
Now, if it ever happens that you come back from a mission and the submarine is not there, but for some reason the navigation is perhaps not 100% together, and now you're sort of lost there on the water, what do you do? Because the sun's going to come up.
Yes, of course it happens. I must say that the navigation of the submarines are very, very, very accurate. But the navigation of the guys on the top, you know, sometimes, you know, it's not all, but it happens. So, of course, yes. So you normally have a RV point out at sea, you know, which is, although a sea chart in many cases, you know, it just gives the depth, but it's a blank piece of paper. But it actually has a latitude and a longitude position. So, you know, we would then go to such a position. If the submarine is not there or whatever, it would come to a certain depth where it can act, a periscope depth, where they can actually put out their VHF antenna and either call you or. And that's in most cases. I don't want to say most cases, but the other method is actually dropping a hand grenade into the water, of course. So the sonar system picks up the explosion. It, you know, pinpoints it very accurately, and you know it goes there. Of course, you know, talking about that, a submarine is an amazing thing. You know, to me, it's like a fighter jet. But you know, if you sit in the middle of the sea at night, and all of a sudden this massive thing just pops up right next to you, 10 meters or so from you, it's a frightening experience. And as I've said, the submariners are very, very professional. You know, they know, okay, you know, you're sitting there because they ping you, you know, and they come very close to you, and you know, they can do a vertical pop up, or in many cases, they depending on the tactical situation, obviously, they drive it out. I mean, that is just amazing. It's
I can just
beautiful.
imagine that sight. But I suppose it's in the reverse. Once maybe you get on board and you deflate that dinky thing of yours and you get inside. They're not going to wait for you.
No. But principle, you don't leave anybody behind. So the recovery process is just basically the reverse of the launching part of it, and it also goes very, very quickly, Chris.
Can I ask you, sir, what's the difference between a Navy diver and an attack diver, like in a special forces sense?
Yeah, Chris, the Navy divers, and I haven't done the Navy diving course, but a Navy diver is, and I can be corrected, is a working diver. So they do use mixture of gases and so on to dive deep, but it's mostly for on board a ship you have a werksduiker, a working diver, to do sweeps on the fuselage of the what's a romp, on the on the vessels. Yeah, on the ship's hull, to clear nets or cut ropes from the propellers, do underwater welding, that type of thing. And it's normally with not a rebreather, although they also use rebreathers, the pure oxygen, and then obviously the mixture of gases. Where you go to 210. Below 200 feet, you have to do it with different mixtures. So attack diving course, as in for Recce, is specifically aimed at doing attacks, and that's no bubbles being blown. It's not welding under the water, that type of thing. It's mission orientated. It's you are trained to dive it and navigate at a certain depth to place charges, destroy a target, and get out.
Is it theoretically possible to jump with a parachute and then go under the water, do the job, and then rendezvous with, say, a naval ship somewhere else?
Yes, and we do exercises like that. So you have your rebreathers, you kit up as if diving. And you prepare your equipment in such a way, and then yes, you can go to a certain area, you parachute in, jettison your parachute, and then group, tie up into your position, get ready for the dive, and execute. Yes, we've done that. It can be done. It's done.
You said once, or a few times actually, that you would transfer to the submarine.
Yeah.
From say the Tafelberg or one of those vessels. How do you actually transfer? So is it by boat or by helicopter, or you just swim to it, or what do you do?
No, because of the speed of the submarine, it takes a submarine twice the time to get from A to B than another vessel, due to the capabilities of the submarine. Now, especially if you go up the west coast or the east coast or so on, it takes them a long time to actually get to the venue, and the space and the victuals and everything on board the submarine is limited. So in most cases, what would happen is the submarine would depart whichever base it is, and then head towards the RV position or the target area. Then the operators would be on board a bigger vessel that there's more facilities and so on. And then when you get to a certain place, you transfer. Now, it's normally in a safe area. either during the day or at night. And all that entails is the submarine surfaces, and then the operators from the boat actually climbs down either a ladder or the scuttle nets into either inflatable, not either, it's normally an inflatable boat, and you go alongside the submarine. Normally, and in most cases, your kit and equipment which you will use during your submarine mission is loaded, preloaded before you depart. So it will normally just be the essential stuff you have with you, and then you as the body transfer. So that's what the transfer means. And then vice versa, it's the same. When you come back, the submarine surfaces, get into the inflatable, go alongside the mother vessel, and then you scale it up and go on board the main vessel as well.
I suppose this is done mostly at night under the cover of darkness.
Yes, mostly, but depending on, we've done it during the day as well, but yes, preferably at night.
Well, I've seen pictures of these submariners having a barbecue on their deck in the middle of the sea.
Yeah.
But they are a special breed. I think since 1968, there were 1,050 of them who actually qualified as submariners in South Africa. A very special breed. I really wish one of them would come and talk to us. Anyone from the Navy, actually, anyone. Yeah. Because we haven't had anyone from the Navy here yet. But now I have to ask you the last question on the submarines and for reconnaissance. Did you also have to go through that submarine training where you go up this swimming pool thing where you escape from a submarine should you need to escape from it? It's like this deep pool, and the guy just goes up there like a bat out of hell. I think he goes so fast up, suddenly his feet sticks out of the water, or was it in the water? But yes, I can see you grinning. So perhaps you can tell us about that.
Yeah, of course. No, I've never participated in that. I think it's more a Navy thing. I think if you're a submariner, you actually do that. Of course, in my time, no, we did not do that emergency drills with the submarines where you actually do the emergency escape. I'm not sure if the guys, on more advanced courses do that, but I'm not aware of it, but I don't know everything. And I'm sure probably some of the guys have done it, and especially in the more recent era, the training has become more sophisticated. So maybe, I don't know, Koos. But in my time, no. But I'm aware of that drills, and I'm sure the submariners does that, but no, I haven't done it.
Well, I'm sure one of them will come and tell us about those horror stories, but I've heard a few things about it, and that you're supposed to sing or something while you go up, so you can equalize the air in your chest. Yeah. And it seems that the British Navy guys are known for making foul words. They just curse all the way up to the top. And the French sing. I don't know what the South Africans do, but probably, I don't know, I would like to find out. But this other project of yours, the long distance reconnaissance, did that fall under Barnacle? Or was it totally separate?
No, it was separate course. Barnacle, and I have to pick my brains now. It's in the early 80s. The guys had to, I think, do reconnaissance work into Botswana, Lesotho, Swaziland, those places. So, they got also did with aliases and other documentation. That was Barnacle, and it was allocated to the small teams at that stage. Was Stadler, Didis, Neves, and other, not only them. But no, what happened in 4 was a totally separate thing, distant from CCB, the Civil Cooperation Bureau. It was a lone standing thing only in 4 Recce, and 1 Recce had one, and 5 Recce also had a similar type of organization, but I know for a fact that they did not go as extensive as we did in 4.
And I have to ask you, sir, because, being a spy, being in a different country on a deep cover, as you were for years now, and you follow your legend, which you call an alias, it's sort of schizophrenic almost. I mean, you become that person, and you have to be.
Yeah.
Were there ever times that you felt to yourself, I'm not sure who I am anymore, or perhaps that you felt I'm lonely now? Because I know about one spy who walked down here in Switzerland, actually, and he walked down the road, and it was like Christmas time, and the next moment, one of these Oopla bands or something started playing Sari Mare. And she said to me afterwards, she said to me, you know what, up to then I had the time of my life. I was like, man, I'm doing what I can. I'm enjoying this. It's a great adventure. And it hit her. Like a 4-pound hammer against the head. She actually had to sit down and just refocus herself. Would you agree in principle that the spy there actually has a very lonely life?
I want to say yes and no. Yes, in the sense, or I want to start by the psychological preparedness. Bear in mind, when you become an operator, you get psychologically screened very, very well. So I think it actually starts there. And then, so I think your mind must be very, very disciplined. You must know when you are A, and you must know when you are B. Let's say A is your normal life. You live your normal life. Now I know a lot of guys that actually, mix these things. They play A and B at the same time, which I think is very dangerous and it's irresponsible. The courses I ran, that's one of the things we focused on very, very well, or drilled many times, is if you are B, you are B, and you live B, and you are B. A does not exist. And within your mind, and I think it's you have to be psychologically very strong, to my opinion, to live that to the full. And you cannot allow that if you walk down the street and you are A, or you are A, but your alias is B, and somebody calls you A, you should not flinch, you should not miss a step, you should not turn an eyebrow, you should just carry on. Now we know that. And then another thing, Koos, and I ran a lot of exercises like that, and we also turned off a lot of people that actually wanted to join our group, or we identified to join our group, and that is by taking in alcohol. A lot of people just lose their minds when they get intoxicated. And so on the courses I ran, at this stage, we just have a braai. It's got nothing to do. Okay, at this point we're gonna have a braai, we're gonna invite people, but you have to be your alias. And and then we braai and we drink beer and rum and whatever, and then there's selected people as guests would test the people in terms of a lot of things. And a lot of guys failed that test. Especially when you sober, when you're under pressure, if you fail, you're going to get nailed. Your psyche is different. But if you're intoxicated, and to me that's very important, because I mean, a lot of people don't drink, and I don't say that, but to act normal, to fit into certain situations, you have to act normal, drink a beer here and there. But if you reach a certain point and you cannot deal, or you don't have that mental discipline, A, to know when to stop, be to, even if you are intoxicated to a certain extent, still live your alias, you don't make it. I mean, then, I can tell you a story, question. I don't think if people can see this thing in my hand. One of our operators, prior to a deployment, and I know this guy can drink one beer, then that's enough. If he drinks a second beer, he can't maintain his sanity, so to speak. The day before we actually deployed into a very critical area, we went and had a beer and had a meal and so on. And he was a bit of a womanizer, and there was a nice lady he wanted to charm and so on. And I said to the guy, "Let's go." And another beer. I said, "You are allowed one beer. You've had your one beer. Come." Of course, and it's me and him now going on an operation. Of course, I knocked him out. I knocked him with a fist, stone cold, knocked him down to the ground and pulled him out. They wanted to arrest me for assaulting somebody else in the bar, but to save the day and to save the operation, and in fact, I broke a bone in my hand. So I deployed that whole operation with a broken hand, a swollen broken hand, but I couldn't go for plaster of Paris and everywhere I had to greet people. I think we deployed for 6 weeks or more. So it healed, and it's still a lump on my hand today. So, of course, no, mentally you have to be very, very clear and focused to maintain that discipline. And it's difficult, because I was very, very scared the first time I deployed without a weapon or anything to defend myself. Just that, like, psychological switch where you go into the bush. Where a month ago you walked into the bush with a uniform and a rifle. You see the troops. A month later, you go to the exact same place, but you are in service. You see the exact same soldiers. You don't have a weapon with you. To me, that was a big psychological thing to actually work through in my mind. And to learn that you can survive in a violent environment, a war environment, without being armed.
Well, I think that's why they call you people special. But I have one very last question, because somebody asked me this the other day. They wanted to know if Special Forces ever received training in hand-to-hand combat. Would you be able to defend yourself, besides the usual punches you learn at school or at a rugby game?
Yeah. Was on various occasions in one Recce, I know, when we were there, we were taught karate and Krav Maga and these funny things to do X, Y, and Z. But to be very honest, with me in person, never. I boeremoer is maar die ding, jy weet, and be smart, try and be smart, not to. There's different ways of defending yourself now. From a normal big pen to to anything. A small piece of stick which you pick up, shove it into somebody's eye or into his ear or whatever. But of course, no. I must say, in my time in Special Forces, that wasn't a big thing. To be, a black belt karate or that type of thing. No, but I think it's important. I think 99% of the Special Forces, they all do that and they can defend themselves. But yes, we all have the basic knowledge of how to defend yourself in certain circumstances. Yes.
We've come to the end of another episode, and may I say, a most fascinating one. I thank you for your time. It's just great. It's great listening to you. We learn so much from you. And this is the type of knowledge which cannot get lost in history. And so I thank you again, once again, Colonel. We'll see each other again. I'm sure there will be another couple of episodes and a few special ones as well, because I believe the viewers will not let you just go. We're going to hold you to this thing. I'll tell you about it later. So anyway, as I always say to all of you here, thank you for your thumbs up. Contact me if you think you have a story. You probably do have a story. All you need to do is write me an email. I will get back to you. You'll be surprised how quickly I get back to you. And I will probably not be able to actually record you until next year sometime, because people are streaming in. And I'm really grateful for that. You've done well, everybody who's listening here. Do not ever feel that you are unimportant. You are not unimportant. You are part of a bigger picture, bigger wheel. Even if you're a small cog, it's essential. Thank you for that. Until we meet again, God bless.
Thank you, Koos.